Welcome back to another Open Topics video. Yeah, I haven't done one of these in a couple months. Reason? Didn't have anything to talk about, so this one I'm doing another one of these. I've done this one since episode 8, mind you. The current state of the X-Men comics. Summer of last year, we had the awesomely told The Dawn of X, which has proved to be a really good hit because we're actually finally getting more than like one or two X-Men titles. Currently, we have 5 being published right now. Yes, 5. Which you're probably thinking, when was the last time we had this many and be consistently good? And this all started with 2 miniseries that Hickman himself wrote, The House of X and The Powers of X. Both these 2 miniseries, 6 issues long, published over the course of 3 frickin' months. Maybe, and this I think I give high praise to Marvel for doing this, I think some people are not liking the fact that sometimes 6-issue miniseries drag out for a long-ass period of time, like in the case of War of the Realms. That was done in a few months because people liked the fact it was done really quickly, and people had to wait a frickin' long time, wait a whole frickin' month for the next part. Just wait a couple weeks. And here's something interesting that we gotta love about this particular the 2 miniseries and this that came afterwards. We have a read order. Yes, a read order. Now I'm not sure of when in the world. Now this makes total sense due to the fact Hickman loves having stuff connected with each other. That's his shtick. Basically, he loves doing when he's working on or at least in charge of a lot of stuff. He likes to have stuff connect because this is supposed to be a big universe. He understands that, and that's basically what he's doing. And he has it where the first thing he does as soon as he takes over these 2 miniseries. Now, the previous stuff, Matthew Rosenberg, that ended with the whole thing with his run and the Age of X stuff. This is the new stuff now. With the current X-Men initiative, we have the X-Men have a no frickin' island country on the island of Crota. Yeah, where apparently all mutants are there. There's just some bigotry there, and now, I don't mind it, but thank God they're not going overboard with it like Guggenheim did on X-Men Gold. That was one thing I did not like about the Gold run. It was a great book overall. I think a great storytelling. I think the bigotry was completely out of control, and basically it got to a point where in the series, there was a law passed to have all mutants deported, which is by far the stupidest thing they can do, especially since people are freaking heroes. Well, they're out of the U.S. now. Probably for the first time since the 1980s, the X-Men have operated out of the United States. Technically, well, you could say, wait, what about Utopia in 2010, about 2012? Well, that was an island off the coast of San Francisco. I'd say about 5 or 6 miles. They were still within the U.S. borders for that one. That one doesn't count. This is a completely different. Now the whole thing outside of the country. Or you could say, oh wait, what about during Bendis' run when they operated freaking Canada? Well, yes. But this is way far away. I think this is someplace in the Pacific Ocean. This is an island created to be a haven for mutants. And here's kind of the thing. Despite the fact this country is actually recognized by the UN, certain countries don't recognize this country's existence because it's populated by mutants. The bigotry is tremendously downplayed. I'm sure Hickman realized though of this when he took over the X-Men title, because he knew about the fact this particular franchise has had in-universe constant bigotry since the 1960s. And okay, he probably wanted to know, okay, we have to keep it there because that's part of the X-Men shtick. That it's been their MO since the 60s. But let's tremendously turn it down to about 2 or 3 volume set. That's basically a good move. Also, and this is by far one of the smarter decisions he did. That was the first thing he did. Second, he resurrected all the dead characters. Every single one, including a character Bendis did not even care to resurrect, Brian Michael The Brian Michael Bendis did not care to resurrect. Matter of fact, he stated during his run he would not resurrect this guy. But yeah, Hickman, the first thing he did is he resurrected Charles Xavier, even though technically Rosenberg actually showed kind of beat into, but this is a full-on resurrection. And Xavier's got a new look for him. He's got this giant big ball on his head with a giant X, basically acting like a freaking Cerebro. That's pretty much what he has. And we sort of have a rebirth for the original 5 X-Men, who are actually all alive, by the way. And they sort of have a rebirth ceremony for them. And one of the first things they did is that apparently Sabretooth was being a fugitive from the country because he was wanted for his crimes. They have sort of a confrontation with the Fantastic Four, which I'm thinking... Now, this is something I thought was really weird when we started. Like, I had heard stuff they were going to reboot the X-Men franchise, but I'm thinking like, okay, are you going to ignore everything that's been going on from the X-Men since the 1960s? Well, after a little while, the answer is no. Nothing is ignored here, as far as I can tell. One thing that Hickman did keep, and I think I'm actually pretty happy he kept this, because one of the titles they established after this, Excalibur, it was actually revealed in a recent issue that Rogue and Gambit are still married. Which, thank you, Hickman, for keeping that there, even though he's not the one writing the title. Yeah, Excalibur's actually written, yeah. Basically, after House of X and Powers of X, we had a new X-Men title, X-Men Volume 5, which, here's the interesting thing about this, this is the only one actually to keep the original Marvel Legacy numbering, though they apparently drop it for the first issue for some strange reason. I don't know why, but they do. And, like... This is one of the titles they launched right with Hickman with these new ongoing series. This is the one he has control over. We also have Marauders by Gary Duggan, which, by the way, this is the original title. Now, the whole group of Marauders, this is not a name that is not original to the X-Men franchise. The Marauders are a very controversial group because Chris Claremont created this group back in the 1980s, and they're the ones who are the main antagonists of the first X-Men crossover, Mutant Massacre, where pretty much all the Morlocks got killed, except like a handful of them, by these people. And this group is basically what caused Sabretooth's introduction to the X-Men franchise after hanging out in books like Spider-Man and Iron Fist. He got introduced as an Iron Fist villain before he became a X-Men villain. And, like, he got captured. And then here's something quite weird, though. Apparently, if you break the laws of Kreta, you get to be put in suspended animation. You sort of get killed, per se, but you can sort of get buried alive under the frickin' island. And this happened to Sabretooth. And then he was never mentioned again. And apparently, we have a ruling council. Mostly comprised of, like, people, like, in charge of the island are most of basically the senior X-Men. With frickin' Apocalypse on the frickin' council and Magneto. Now, Magneto kind of makes sense because he's been kind of so reformed since the last decade. So, that makes perfect sense. What doesn't make sense was Apocalypse. My only guess is the reason why Apocalypse was turned kind of heroish, or at least working with the X-Men, because this something kind of was established during when Matthew Rosenberg was writing the book. So, look, Apocalypse still has his classic look from the 80s, which I appreciate the fact the artist who drew Powers of X kept that there. And he basically, his motif was basically, like, survival of the fittest. And, like, from what I can tell, he still kind of has it, but that's another thing they trimmed down him. Basically, he is voluntarily working with the X-Men because he probably feels as though this is a good direction for him. Yes. And we have new costumes. Now, most of the X-Men costumes are mostly the same costumes they had over the years. Like, for example, look at Rachel Gray, for example. She's had pretty much the same costume for the past 20 years. So, not much change for her. I don't know if she went back. From what I can tell, they don't mention her code name in the books, but she's kept pretty much the same look, per se. Cyclops, he went back to the Bendis look, but not the same color scheme. Now, the top part of his costume is like classic Cyclops, like full blue top and the visor, but from the shoulder down, it's the Bendis costume. But here's the difference between that costume and this costume. The colors are different. When Bendis was writing the X-Men from 2012 to about I think it was like 2015, I think it was, Cyclops wore a black and red costume. Basically, all black with these red lines. This costume is blue and white, which is a nod to his X Factor costume from the 1980s. It's like, I'm saying, you're probably thinking that, wait, you're mentioning the 1980s a lot because I think Hickman is a fan of the 80s style of X-Men writing. That's probably what we get here. And, and he also brought back Cable, the original one, not the kid one. I'm not sure what happened to him. He just disappeared. And, and it was revealed in the 5th issue, which came out just this past week, that Laura, who was X-23 for the past couple years, like a little over a year, and I myself and my friend Tivia basically probably agree this was a stupid move on the part of Marvel, just because the original Wolverine is alive. Okay, they think, okay, the original Wolverine is alive, let's take away the identity of Wolverine from Laura and have her X-23 and give her a title as X-23. It was not a terrible title. I just didn't like the fact they went backwards in character development. And then Hickman, in the 5th issue of the current book, did something right. He had Laura back in the Wolverine costume, which, thank you, Hickman, for doing that. That's another great decision he made. Now, other people might be disagreeing with this, but in my opinion, this was a smart move on his part. Now, what about the other books? Now, the main book basically is like the flagship, like the hub of everything that goes on in the X-Men books. Perfect. Other artists by Gary Duggan and like 4 or 5 different artists in the book. You have Return of Excalibur for the first time since like 2008. Yeah, when it was the new Excalibur run. Yeah, that's been that long. Like, at the time this came back last year, this is the first time in 11 years that we had an Excalibur title. And usually, and here's kind of the interesting thing, with the exception of the 3rd volume, the first 2 volumes and the new Excalibur book were all based in the UK. This one is based in Crota. Now, the leader of the group is Captain Britain, but it's not Brian Braddock. Psylocke is now Captain Britain for some strange reason. Yeah, the book doesn't properly explain it. We also have a return to the New Mutants title. For the first time since 2012, we had a return to this freaking title. Yes, because if anybody that's ever read the 3rd volume of New Mutants, it is a fantastic volume. Because the thing with, if you read, that volume or the original volume was 100 freaking issues. Now, you could say the book kind of changed when Rob Liefeld took over the book. Basically, it became sort of the leading ground, planting the seeds for what became X-Force, and a much more longer title. But New Mutants under book writers like Ann Nocenti and Chris Claremont basically was really good. And I think now this is by far the second time in the history of the X-Men franchise we actually had a X-Force title and a New Mutants title published at the same time. Last time, of course, was in 2010. Yep, that was the last official time this happened. And we have it again. Now, X-Force was brought back, actually, believe it or not, this is actually quite interesting. It was actually brought back at the start of last year, lasting for about 10 issues. Actually, it was brought back in late 2018. It was brought back after the events of Extermination. Yeah, they actually just brought back the title for the first time since 2015 when Cy Spurrier wrote the book. And this book, they actually had to restart the numbering for this book. Now, that book was written by Ed Bronson. Yes, this current volume is done by Ben Percy, who I think is doing a pretty good job with the book. The Mutant title is done by Ed Bronson and John Hickman. Excalibur is by Tina Howard, who's a woman. Yes, a woman. Now, technically, you can kind of count this as the 6th title of the book. 6th title of the initiative, Fallen Angels. Another book that was published in the 80s. But this was an 8-issue limited series that was turned into an ongoing series. And here's kind of something really weird about this. This book actually ended this past week. Yeah, it ended after publishing 6 issues. And of course, we still have more titles coming. Now, there's also, believe it or not, the Deadpool title came back. Yeah, apparently Scotty Young left the book, and it's relaunched, and we have a woman, I think Kelly Thompson writes the book now, which I think is quite interesting, because she's the second female writer who's ever written Deadpool. Last one was Gail Simone at the end of Volume 1 back in the late 90s. Yeah. Now, we also had the return of several other titles coming out soon. One title actually coming out in just 18 days is the return of the Wolverine title. Now, this is the first time this particular title has been published since 2014. Yes, when they had Paul Cornell as the writer of the book, that was leading to Wolverine's death. This is basically Wolverine as dealing with stuff from his past, which I'm looking forward to it. I think it's great to bring this book. And like almost every one of these books, with the exception of one, actually about a couple of them, basically a revival of old titles. Another one, Cable, done by Gary Duggan. Yes, this is actually the second title he does on this initiative. Yeah, Cable, which actually ended back in 2017 as a lead into Extermination after issue, I think it was like 159. Yeah, the book actually returned to its triple digit numbering in 2017, but here's basically what I think what turned people off in the book was the change of creative team every 5 issues. In my opinion, this is what killed the book. The book was great overall, but I think this is what killed the book, in my opinion. And to have a different writer, now bringing back this title, this is actually another move on the part of on Marvel to do. Now you have Gary Duggan on the writing, of course, but Phil Noto on the artwork, which makes this. I'm trying to think though. I think this might be the first X title he's ever drawn, because when I think of Phil Noto, I think of stuff like what he did for Birds of Prey, or in the case that he worked on Star Wars and he worked on Poe Dameron. I can't think of like any other book he's actually worked on, like off the top of my head, because the guy's one damn good artist. And him to do a X-Men book, that's quite interesting. The fact that he does that. Yes, we also see Helion's title coming out next month. Now, this is done by Zeb Wells, a very good writer that doesn't get a lot of recognition. I mean, a lot of people don't really talk about him. I mean, people talk about like almost a lot of big writers left Marvel Comics in the last several years, with currently just Jason Aaron and Mark Waid being the only writers. Zeb Wells has been there since the early 2000s, and he's still going. Yeah, because that's a lot of what people turned off from Marvel since like 2012 was a lot of the big name writers leaving the company, and like I agree. Basically, despite the fact there was still some good storytelling that came after that, I think that having a lot of the exodus of a lot of the really big games, Hickman was actually one of them. He actually left in 2015 to go to Image. That's not a joke. That's what he did. Like, that's kind of the strange thing when it comes to Marvel writers. Like, all of who had left in the past several years, with the exception of 2, went to Image. Yeah, all of them did. The only 2 who didn't was Brian Michael Bendis and James Robinson. Those 2 went. Robinson, he went back to DC. Bendis, he was going to DC for the first time ever after working at Marvel for 20 years. Yes, 20 years working at Marvel. And yeah, I think it's great that Brian. Of course, he had technically been brought back thanks to the Shield series that him and Dustin Weaver did, that the last 2 issues published last year, which I thought was really awesome. In fact, we also see a return of we also see from the Atom series, which, believe it or not, this was another miniseries they turned to an ongoing series. So here's kind of the thing. This series actually came out in 1999. So when it was announced last year, like, wow, we're bringing this title back as an ongoing series, and last time it was being published was 20 years prior, though it was called X-Men Children of the Atom, though this Focus Next Generation, I think is really good, the fact they're doing that. And the other title, like, there were 2 other titles introduced. One is not officially announced a date for it yet. We also see the return of X Factor. When I saw this article, I'm like, X Factor? Wow! It had been like a little over 4 years since the last time this title was published. Yeah, when Peter David was writing the book. Yeah, the book actually ended, I think, just after Access came out. And like, the book itself was really good when it was all new X Factor. I think maybe, and this is just my opinion, I think what people may got turned up by the book was the artwork. I didn't think the artwork was terrible. It's just that another problem I think with the book was the fact it's come out twice a month. I think for some people it was a little too much for people. So that could be the reason why it got canceled 20 issues. and I did confirm this with Peter David. He did partially. The inspiration for this version was based upon the original version from the 80s. Now, Leah Williams digging the book. That's interesting. Now, not the first female writer who has written this book, because here's kind of the thing. The original writer for X Factor was a woman, Louise Simonson, the wife of the awesome Walt Simonson, the guy who in the same decade of the 80s did Thor. Yeah. That guy. Yep. And I think X Factor is a really good move on the part of Marvel. It's interesting, though, we're not going with Peter David with the book. Probably because he's doing his Symbiote Spider-Man series and miniseries. Yeah, this is actually the first. Now, I guess for some people who just basically grew up just reading the Peter David runs, like the original, his second X Factor run from the mid-2000s, from that book and All New X Factor, you're like, hey, why are we having a woman taking up Peter David's book? Well, technically, this is not originally Peter David's book. This was actually Louise Simonson's book with Bob Layton on the artwork. Yep. I think this is a good move with Marvel Comics. The other book I was actually quite surprised to see. This is going to be an ongoing series. Now, as far as I can tell, there's not been an announced release date for this one. It's X-Corp, which I wasn't reading X-Men comics at the time. This is actually something that was basically a revival of a concept from Grant Morrison's run. X-Corp, in case you're wondering what the heck it is pretty much a company. Yes. It was a company meant to promote and protect mutant rights across the whole world. This started in 2001 and with the company closed its doors in 2005. Why? M-Day. Yep, that was the reason why. M-Day. Yeah, and they had various branches. They had branches in the U.S. They had a branch in Hong Kong, which is rumored to be the start of the relationship between Scott Summers and Emma Frost. Yeah. Read Grant Morrison's run. It is a bizarre run to read. Yep. And X-Corp is interesting about bringing this as an ongoing series, but so far, there's been no announced of a creative team or events was coming. I think that was the artist. There's a limited series coming out. Yes. We have the X-Men Fantastic Four title, which this was teased back in Powers of X #1. Written by Chip Zdarsky, great writer, and it's got a great artist too, Terry Dodson, which I think is fantastic. And it comes out this coming week, which I think is really good. The other one is an extended cut of X-Men God Loves Man Kills, the classic one-shot from the 80s, which was loosely adapted for the X-Men 2 film that came out in 2002. Which I think it may have been exactly 20 years after this one-shot was released. It is a very good one-shot. I highly recommend it. We also see the giant-sized X-Men stuff. Now, not the first time X-Men have one-shots. No, this is not a new concept for them. But this is a return of the giant size. I've read an article about this. Hickman really liked Giant X-Men. Well, he basically is a big fan of it. So, bring back the concept of it. Despite the fact we kind of already have a revival of this with X-Men Giants as #1 from X-Men Volume 3 in 2011. Yeah. And here's the interesting thing. Hickman is writing all these with 3 different artists. You have Russell Devers writing the first one-shot, which is Jean Grey and Emma Frost, 2 women who do not like each other, Magneto, and Nightcrawler. Now, in case you wonder about Marauders, they're basically privateers for the Hellfire Corporation. Yes, the Hellfire Club has basically evolved from being a sex club to basically a business. Yeah, and by the way, here's something I thought was interesting about this book. One thing that kind of proved that yes, everything happened before still happened. The Hellfire Club lineup from Jason Aaron's run for Wolverine X-Men, they actually appear in this book. Yes, and this book is quite interesting. Now, the main characters from Marauders are Kitty Pryde, Lockhead, Emma Frost, Bishop, Storm, Iceman, Pyro, and I believe Sunfire. He was rumored to be part of the group, but he's not in the main book itself. Along with Sebastian Shaw, he's in the book too, which Okay, this is actually the first time he's been featured in the book in a little while. I think the last time I remember seeing him, like prior to this book coming out, was I think like X-Men was the Colin Bunn run for Kenny X-Men. That was the last time I think I can remember seeing him. But it's surprising though we have the return of the Hellfire Club, though as a corporation, like I said, and like Kitty Pryde is the Red Queen. Interesting. And here's also who is interesting. Okay, they actually gone through a couple of different boats. The first boat they stole. The second boat they actually given by Emma frickin' Frost. Now it's interesting now that Kitty Pryde is working Emma Frost, given the fact these two women have hated each other since their debut appearance. Yes, that's not a joke, because the first day Kitty Pryde joined the X-Men, Emma Frost kidnapped them. Yes. And these two hate each other over the years, which a lot of writers have played this up over the years. But apparently Gary Duggan's like, nope, let's just throw it out the window, have be basically good guys now for some strange reason. The most recent issue you have is where Sebastian Shaw tried to kill Kitty Pryde. Yeah, I'm not really sure why. Excalibur, its lineup is basically Psylocke as Captain Britain. Yeah, it's quite weird. We also have Gambit, Rogue, Jubilee, her son Shogo, Richter, and Apocalypse. Yeah, he's part of this group. Now, Richter, here's kind of the interesting about him. He's not been active as an X-Men character. He did briefly appear in, like, toward the end of X-Men of the Iceman ongoing series by Sonia Grace, who's actually a gay writer. But he's not been a factor in X books since Peter David's X Factor book. Apocalypse is interesting. Yeah. Now, I look at Life of New Mutants like most of his lineup is classic New Mutants. Magic, Mirage, Sunspot, Cypher, Wolfbane, Karma. Yeah, this is all classic New Mutants, which I think is great. And the group also has Chamber, Mondo, I don't know who this guy is, Boom Boom, Armor, Glove Harmon, who's a Grant Morrison character. Yes, a Grant Morrison character, part of a New Mutants book. Okay. The Starjammers and frickin' Cannonball. Now, Sunspot Protocol is interesting because Al Ewing had a part of his Avengers, 2 Avengers books he did. Like New Avengers and US Avengers. But now he's going back to be New Mutant again, which is interesting. Yeah. X-Force, which this title basically opened up one of the most shocking opening issues I have ever seen. They attempt to kill Charles Xavier in the first issue, though a couple issues later he's fine now. Yep. Lamp is basically this: Charles Xavier, Beast, Jean Grey, Wolverine, Kid Omega, Domino, and Sage. Of this entire lineup, only Wolverine and Domino actually associated with X-Force. Of course, Domino's been associated with X-Force since 1990s. Wolverine's part of the group since the Chris Yo's Craig Caliburn, which is really good. I own most of the run. It is really damn good. I love it. I was reading when it was coming out. It was fantastic. Sage is interesting because the only group she's ever part of is the X-Men. She's part of Hellfire Club. But that's it. Yeah, everyone's pretty original to the group. Fallen Angels? Yes. And its lineup is this: Psylocke, who is under 2 different bodies, Kawana and Ravalanche. X-23, though this is later linked to X-Men Volume, her basic Wolverine, Kid Cable, Bling, and Husk. Husk, like, wow, Cannonball's smoking hot sister, be involved in an X-Men book. I mean, she's not a major factor since, well, there was that storyline where she and Warren Warrington, there were a couple, and people thought this was icky. She was an adult. Get over it. Yeah. Very odd lineup, though this book ended. Bling be part of a lineup. That's quite interesting because here's kind of the strange thing about this character. This character's been around since Peter Mulligan was on the X-Men Volume 2 title. And after he left, nothing much was done with this character, aside from that storyline for Nation X, where she revealed at the end of the storyline she had a crush on Rogue, which went nowhere. And then after that, of course, when they did the X-Men Volume 4 title by Brian Wood, she asked Mercury out on a date and became girlfriends. After that, nothing. She's not been much of a factor in the X-Men books. I like the character. I think she's a really good look. I like her look for her and her appearance, but nothing's been done with this character. And I do mean nothing. Wow, so much freaking nothing with this character. Cable, of course, is focusing on the kid version of Cable for some reason. I don't know why. Hellions. This is quite interesting of a lineup. I mean, you look at this lineup like, wow. It's like, damn. Where the heck did this lineup from? Mr. Sinister, Havoc, Psylocke, Kawan, Orphan Maker, Nanny, Empath, Scalp Hunter of the freaking Marauders, and Wild Child. Wild Child, the guy killed by Wolverine, X-Men, and Wolverine Origins. Yeah, he got stabbed in the heart around the same time he killed off Omega Red. Yeah, he was brought back by Mark Guggenheim in his book, so don't worry about him being resurrected. X Factor's land with Prestige, which I think is Rachel Summers. Boy, yeah, he was a character created by, I think, Hickman. No, not Hickman. He was created by Jason Aaron. Did pretty much nothing with him. Prodigy. Yes, this character from. Yeah, I remember this guy. Yeah, this particular character, it was from that new X-Men title, who has not acted that awful Young Avengers book, North Star. Wow, freaking North Star. What was the last time he was a factor in the X-Men books? Probably not since Astonishing X-Men, when he got married to another guy, and that has played nothing. Like, as soon as Astonishing X-Men that run ended, and I think it was like 2014, I think it was, he has not been a factor in the X-Men titles since then. He has barely played a role since then, and it's something that's part of the group. We also have Polaris and Daken. Yes, Polaris and Daken. Polaris, yes, she does have she's probably the only one who's got history with the X Factor name, because she was part of the lineup back in the 90s when Peter David started his brief run in the book before he quit and have a different writer. Doc can be part of a group that's not some evil villain group. It's interesting because the only group he's technically been part of is the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants during Rick Remender's awesome run for Kenny X-Force. That was the only time, actually it was only two groups he was part of. The other courses he was part of the Horseman Apocalypse as one of the 4 Horsemen of Death. Yeah, so as of right now, the X-Men franchise is basically on a big boom right now. I'd definitely say so. Yeah, but despite the fact this initiative only started back in July of last year, I gotta say, in the past, 6 months, the franchise has been really good. Got a good connecting order. And here's something, though, that apparently a lot of the other titles are missing. We actually have release dates for these certain titles. So people can actually read these titles when they come out. And I think Marvel Studios for a lot of their books. One franchise they should definitely do it for is the Spider-Man franchise. Yeah. For some reason, Deadpool was not part of this lineup for some reason, despite the fact he was relaunched. Yeah. It's kind of weird. But yeah, not much else to say about Dawn of X. It's really good so far. And I'm personally loving it. So yeah, that's definitely the last thing I'm doing today, because I was thinking of doing this for a while, but I figured, though, I already have my 3 videos for an hour and a half. Why not do this one as well as a bonus video for today? And, I'm sure a lot of people have their opinions about Dawn of X, but in my opinion, this is a step in the right direction for the X-Men franchise. The X-Men have not been this big in a long time. And the reason is actually quite petty, because of the blood feud between Marvel Comics and Fox. My only guess is the reason why this initiative went through, or at least when it started last year, and this is my opinion, was because of Disney buying Fox. That probably launched the X-Men basically where they should be, a much better franchise, because Yeah, it's kind of been a thing for the past like decade where people were under the assumption Marvel was trying to get rid of the X-Men because of the stupid movie rights issue. Yes, that was a fan theory people had for years. Oh, and by the way, do you know who sparked that blood feud between Marvel Comics and Fox? Ike Perlmutter. Yes, a guy who thinks he can stick his nose and have finger like, I'll dabble in this little thing here and there. I'll dabble in here. I'll dabble in there. Yeah, this guy is paranoid. He is, let's just say, obsessed with his own thing. And you want to know how paranoid he is? Apparently, get this, there's only two public pictures of the man. Yeah, like there is no recent appearance of this guy because the guy is so secretive. He does not like his picture taken at all. And yet, Kevin Feige has his picture taken no problem. Though I have heard he's taking over a lot of control from Ike Perlmutter. I hope at some point he gets ousted from the. I hope at some point he gets. I hope he retires from Marvel Comics and have somebody a lot better. Though I heard that Kevin Feige is taking a lot more control over not only. I mean, he's not. He has not only control of the movies. He has control of the TV shows and possibly the publication side of Marvel Comics itself. Yeah, because he was a Marvel president just last year, which I'm looking to see a new stage direction. Yeah, in case you're wondering, is there any like extreme feminist stuff for the X franchise? A lot of people tend to worry about that. No, there isn't. It's basically good old classic storytelling by a guy who's a big fan of the 80s, just like I am. Okay? So, until I see you on tomorrow's videos, which are hopefully reviews for One Piece, Boruto, and probably some other video. Okay? See you in the next video. Bye.